Here's 2 tools you can use to not run out of things to say in conversation. So conversation, in terms of the words being spoken, so not including body language, is made up only of 3 component parts: questions, statements, and silences. You can't do anything in a conversation other than one of these 3 things. So I'm going to give you a way you can use questions and a way you can use statements to both not run out of things to say and at the same time make your conversations more engaging for everyone, including for yourself. We can categorize different questions in lots of ways. Lots of people have heard of open and closed questions. What I'm going to give you is a bit different, but better for social skills. So it's yes-no questions and non-yes-no questions. If it makes sense to answer with a yes or no, then it's a yes-no question. And for the geniuses of you out there, if it does not make sense to answer yes or no, then it's a non-yes-no question. So for example, are you okay? Makes sense if I answer yes or no. How are you is almost exactly the same question, but now it doesn't make sense if you answer yes or no. So that's a non-yes-no question. Here's a few more examples. By using questions that do not make sense to answer yes or no, we're going to get, on average, a longer response from the other person. Of course, some individual people give long or short answers no matter what. But over the course of 1,000 times, if I ask 1,000 people, are you okay? 1,000 people, how are you? Or 1,000 people, are you cold? Versus how cold are you? Almost exactly the same question in both those pairs. But on average, we're going to get longer answers from the non-yes-no questions, which means that it's going to take more time for the other person to say them, and it's going to contain more different points on average, which is helpful to us. The extra time that you buy yourself is good for managing your emotions. So if you're nervous, it's easier to calm down while you're listening than when you're talking for most people. If we took 2 situations where you speak to someone new by asking a question, but in situation A, their answer is 2 seconds long, and in situation B, their answer is 10 seconds long, that's more time to relax in the second situation, isn't it? If you're nervous. Managing your emotions is the most important thing in social skills, in my opinion, because your emotions always end up being sent in some way or another, whether it's your words, your choices, your body language, etc. The second benefit to more time is you have more time to think about other stuff. So if you've managed to both listen and work out roughly what your response is, which obviously should come first, you might have a spare bit of time left over, or maybe if you're calm and fast thinking enough, you can think of a third thing at the same time. You can consider other stuff like what topics might this lead on to, what topics have been left behind that I can go back to easily, what's in the room around me that I can talk about, what jokes do I have, what stories could I have. There's never enough useful information that you can take in a social situation. There's always tons and tons of different options and things going on constantly. So that's why, in my opinion, quick thinking is the second most important thing in social skills after managing your emotions. One of many reasons why the stereotypical nerd usually has the magic combination of both usually being intelligent but bad at social skills is because they tend to be focused on being perfect, slow, whereas social skills massively favours the person who's focused more on being good enough, quick, and running with it with confidence. You can practice this on your own. Write down yes-no questions, confirm they are indeed yes-no questions by answering yes and seeing if it makes sense, and then edit the question so it's almost exactly the same question, but now it doesn't make sense to answer yes or no. And if you get fast enough, you'll be able to use it in real situations. Anytime you have something new you're working on socially and you're not that fast or confident just yet, an easy time to practice it is in a slow text conversation where the replies are half an hour or more between each other, because you have literally thousands of times more time to think than you do in real life. So that's how to use questions to help you not run out of things to say and at the same time make your interactions more engaging for everyone, including for yourself. Here's how to do it with statements. For your statement, so if you're giving a comment about a situation or something, or you're responding to something they've asked you, I have something that I've termed a point cluster. So here we're trying to give our audience the same benefits that we're hoping to receive from the non-yes-no questions: more time and more options. So someone says to me, Ryan, what sports do you like? In answer example A, I could say fighting. So we've got one topic there. In answer example B, I could say fighting, running, and rugby. So I've got 3 options there. If we gave both those answers to 1,000 people asking me that question each, clearly we're going to have more people interested in the conversation with the second example, because there's more options and a certain percentage of people are going to be interested in point 2 or 3 and not point 1. However, all 3 of my options there are all sports. So I call this an umbrella topic, when all of your options can easily be categorized as the same thing. So there might be an extra person in the conversation who doesn't like sports, the topic might be getting boring, or the person might like another topic even more. So ideally we want it to be more varied. So that's why my third example answer, all true answers but different, is I do fighting, running. I used to play rugby when I was in school, and we went on a tour to Canada. Now I've made it really, really easy for someone to completely change the topic of conversation if they want to and talk about traveling or studying. But it's still relevant to my answer. What I haven't done is said fighting, running, rugby, also traffic lights have got a red light. Have you seen it? It's really good. That obviously wouldn't be relevant to the rest of my answer. So school and Canada was where and when I played rugby, so still relevant. So here we've got 5 different options and we've got a good level of variation. So it's more likely that we're going to hit a topic that the other person likes. This is especially important if you don't know much about the other person. It's also fairly long, so it gives them time to listen and calm down. My recommendation is 3, 4, or 5 options. Less than 3, and you're almost definitely wasting potential for your conversation to grow. More than 5, and it starts to become very likely that you're going to encounter negative consequences of talking too much without letting the other people talk, such as losing their focus, being boring, or seeming like you just want to talk about yourself. So then finally, we want to end on a question. If you don't end on a question, then you're relying on the other person or people both wanting to and being able to think of something to say next, which doesn't always happen. And then you can end up with more awkward silences. So unless you can clearly see they're about to talk, if you want to make a conversation grow, then I'd recommend ending on a question. So after the end of my answer, I would say, where have you been traveling? In reference to me going to Canada. So note that this is a different question to what I've been asked back. And this is helpful for you not running out of things to say, because now I can store in my head the question that they asked me, which is what sports do you like? So if you give a different question back, ideally non-yes, no, it usually gives you some extra ammo to fall back on if you run out of things to say in a minute. So the ideal format for my tool of a point cluster is this, if you want to pause. You can practice this too and in a chain with the other exercise. So you have your yes-no questions, change them to non-yes, no questions, try and keep the meaning as similar as possible, then answer that question in this format. Don't make anything up, otherwise it makes the exercise not that helpful. Obviously, I'm not suggesting that you only use these 2 things in conversation, right? These are tools that you can use if you want to. They shouldn't feel fake because you can fill it with stuff that's relevant to you as a person. But if it does feel fake, then just don't do it. If we use both non-yes, no questions and point clusters in combination, we do something similar to this. Imagine I gave you 4 options of different topics to choose from to talk about. You picked one you like the most, and you give me back 4 that are relevant to it. If we repeat this process back and forth, it's very likely we're going to reach a topic we both like. So by using non-yes, no questions and point clusters in combination, we're basically doing that in a non-robotic conversational format. Sometimes I call this the golden topic, the topic that everyone in the situation wants to talk about. If you get to this point, it's usually very hard to run out of things to say or have a boring conversation, even if everyone involved doesn't have good social skills. So this should usually be one of the first aims if you want to make a conversation start flowing, to find the topic everyone wants to talk about. If you want to know more. All of my content on how to never run out of things to say in conversation, plus my best tips.